Hey, this is OT with www.deepfreedomnow.com, and I'd like to share a little bit with you about our embodied premise, what I call the embodied premise. And the embodied premise is something that took me years to appreciate and understand. And really, it came to me out of the experience of spending many years with indigenous people in the Americas, and then also really profoundly through some relationships, uh, especially with a woman from Venezuela who was part Guajira, and I was in a relationship with her for 3 years and her family, and I realized that there was a very different way that these people were with each other than my experience of what family life was like. And with my friend, I got to know her family. Her family would come and visit from Venezuela. Her nieces, she had nieces that would come and stay for months at a time. I had one of her niece's boyfriend come and spend a summer. And there were a whole set of presumptions of how I relate to people and young people in their 20s and in their teens that I realized that my friend did not operate out of. And I began to get a sense of really how behaviors that I engaged in that were perfectly justified or normal in our culture really were perceived as being profoundly disruptive in her culture. And it called me into awareness of how I was in the world and the sort of presumptions that I operated out of. The idea of the embodied premise and the experience of the embodied premise and the development of the embodied premise is really an expression of whether or not we're welcome in our world, in our family, as we are unconditionally, or if we're in a culture that requires us to perform in order to be welcome. And what I mean is what I mean by that is there a presumption that when we're born into our family that we are an expression of incredible intelligence, um, perfection, creativity, and connection to worlds, that create human beings? Or is there the presumption that as human beings and as infants, we engage in a lot of really unpleasant behaviors that need to be continually directed and corrected? In the West, the word that is most often used with children, and on average once every 9 minutes, is the word no. And for me, it was surprising to live in Zapotec communities down in Oaxaca, Mexico, to spend time with Balinese and Minangkabau people in Indonesia, and to live amongst other indigenous groups in the Americas where it was considered profoundly rude to say no to other people, much less to children. And that for me was very surprising because for me, that's the way I learned to relate. How I, especially in anyone that I could have power over, the capacity to say no or direct their actions or thoughts or somehow manipulate their will, in much of Western culture is seen as a very, very normal way to react to other human beings. In many indigenous cultures in the Americas, saying no to someone is profoundly rude, and not only is that rude, but it's also rude to put someone in a position to say no. So asking direct questions where I, direct a question towards someone so that I can get them to do something that I want them to do is also seen as being very disruptive of true connection between human beings. So in those cultures, instead of making direct requests, there's more of a tendency of making statements of needs, and they're not directed at a single individual. They're not directed at somebody's will. So instead of having this sort of linear relationship of, can I or can I not get what I want from you, there's more of a relationship of expressing needs into a circle and allowing the connectedness and the relationship to acknowledge needs and care for needs, and to know that one belongs in a circle of relatedness that is conscious and able to care for each other. Very, very different embodied premise. What I realized, even though I had experienced that, especially with my Cheyenne friends that I spent 5 years with in Oregon, I understood that intellectually. It took me years to understand that the way that these societies achieve harmonious relationships together, these ancient cultures that have proven their capacity to live in a place for thousands or tens of thousands of years without annihilating themselves or each other or the environment that they're in. The way that they do that is not simply a philosophical concept. It's not because they have a certain philosophy. They also embody a premise. There's a way that they are physically welcomed into the world that is very different from how we welcome our children into the world. So I'm going to leave you with that for now. For more, you can visit www.deepfreedomnow.com. I invite you to subscribe, and there'll be a little pop-up window so you can also get email updates on upcoming teleseminars and some upcoming workshops I'll be presenting. Hope you have a great day, and I wish you deep freedom now for the experiencing you're having right now. Thank you.